Welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about comments. So let's get started. So last time we talked about the sequential programming structure. So we left this on here. But imagine that we had this code right here and we just didn't remember what it did. So I come here and I look at this and I say int count equals 0. I'm like, okay, I made a variable and I set it to 0 and then I added 1 to it and then I added 3 to it and then I showed it to the user. What was I doing? Like, what exactly was the purpose of these lines of code, right? So it would be nice if I could come up here and say something like, this code was used for the last video, right? However, this does not work. If I even try to build this, this is going to give me an error. Like, hey, what are you doing? I don't know what this is. This is nonsense for C++. But however, I would like to be able to say, hey, this code, I'm using it for something specific, and I would like to give this justification as a little comment just above here as a single line on top of this code. And so to do that, we have the concept of comments. So in order to do a comment, in every programming language out there has the concept of comments. Of course, the syntax is a little bit different from programming language to programming language, but the syntax to do it in C++ is to use 2 forward slashes. So when I put 2 forward slashes in the very beginning of this line of code, notice that the code gets converted to green. Now, this is to let us know that, hey, right now Visual Studio recognizes that this is a comment. And this is a comment only because at the very front we have put 2 forward slashes. And so now what the compiler does is when we hit build, when I build this, now it works. And so what this does is that it tells the compiler, hey, this green right here, this thing that's followed by these 2 forward slashes is just a comment. Ignore it. It's not part of the code. It is useless to the application. However, it is here because we, the programmers, would like to document some stuff. We would like to say, look, this is what this code does. And this is actually very important. This is as important, I would say it is as important as the rest of your code. Because as your projects and your applications start to get bigger, you need to start writing down what parts of your code does what. And when you start working with other developers, then another issue comes when they start to write code, and then you have to look at their code and say, okay, well, I have to use their code. And for you to go and look at hundreds of lines of code and try to figure out what they did, well, that's going to take you a lot of time. So if they can write these comments and say, hey, this is what this does, this is the purpose of this, then you're able to ignore looking at the code and you say, okay, I know what this is supposed to do, so I'm going to use it, or I'm going to believe the programmer. If you have to look at the code to realize that there's something wrong, at least you have some perspective as to what this code is supposed to do. So if you want to do a comment, the only thing you have to do is put 2 forward slashes, and everything after that will be immediately considered a comment. And this comment, this comment could be anywhere. So I could add a comment here, and I could say / this shows a message to the user. Okay? When C++ reads this, it goes and looks at this line of code, and it ends it at the semicolon at the end of the statement, and then it ignores everything after this 2 forward slashes. And again, we look at this and say, oh, okay, I know what this does. So you're able to write comments wherever you like, either on top of the code that you are trying to document, that you're trying to talk about, or at the end of that line to try and describe what that line does. Okay, this is very common. You will see this everywhere. And in fact, in every video that we start doing from now on, as we move forward, we're going to start using this comments in order to explain things. Okay, now imagine also that you would like to write a long paragraph. So you want to say something like, okay, this piece of code does something amazing. And then you say, so what I ended up doing, and then you keep saying more stuff, right? So you want to write a paragraph. So 2 options that you have here is for every line that you come and you put these comments, you put the 2 slashes, or we use another type of way to say that this is a comment, and this is called a comment block. So a comment block is, I'm going to put this back, a comment block is you can put a / and an asterisk. And notice that Visual Studio automatically typed up for me another asterisk and a / in the opposite order. Anything that you put in between these two sets, in between these two pairs, so everything that goes here, everything that you put here will be considered a comment. And this can span across many lines. So I can put this here, right? So now I can have an entire block just purely for comments. So I can write an entire paragraph. You can write an entire essay if you want. And so there are times where this is quite useful because you have to write a lot. For you to write these forward slashes on every single one of them, this could be quite tedious. So you can also have the option to say this whole block is going to be a comment. And now there's another use why comments could be particularly useful. And this is something that we use a lot in the middle of development because we're trying to test things. But imagine that, let me delete this and let me delete this as well. Imagine that I have a problem and right now I don't want to include this part of code as part of my my thing here, right? Let's say that I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't want to increase count by 1 using increment, and I also don't want to add +3. So but I also don't want to delete this piece of code, right? So what could I do? I could come here and I can just say, okay, I'm going to comment this out. So we usually use the term comment it out, which means now, even though this looks like code, this is completely ignored because it's considered to be a comment. So when I run this, this is going to be what? Let me delete this. This is going to be what? This is going to be the value of 0. So if I run this, you know, here you go. Count is 0 because this is a comment. So then I can come and delete it. And now it's no longer a comment. And if I run it, now it's a 4, right? So in order to end this video, I just want to give a little quick exercise because this is something that when you work with more people, you would want to do. So comments, again, they're used so that we can give a comment about some code. And so we typically call this documentation. We want to say, hey, this is what this code does. And we want some human readable text. So one thing that we always often see is you have a header where in the top of the file, we describe some things about the code in this file. So what I would do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put this comment block. And in here, I'm just going to type author. And the author for me is velcode. So if you are following along with these exercises, which I suggest, what I suggest is that you also do this. And instead of putting velcode, you put your name, right? And in here, I'm going to say purpose, or, you know, the purpose of this file. Let me put this forward. The purpose of this file. This is a project that we are using with the, and then I'm going to come forward here, learn programming with C++ video series. Okay, so now if I was to send this code to someone, instead of actually coming down here and looking at code and saying, what is all these things? I don't get it. They could come here and get an idea about what this file, what the code in this file does. Oh, okay, so he's using this code as part of some video series that he's doing. And who's the author? Oh, it's velcode. So if you work on a team and you have an issue and that issue is in a particular file, you can say, hey, guy, you know, whatever his name is, in this case, velcode, I have a problem. Could you tell me more about what your code does here? Or this thing is not working. Could you fix it? So you know who does what. So comments are very important, and we have two options. We either use a comment block or we just simply use a line comment, which we use 2 forward slashes, and anything that follows after the 2 slashes, no matter where we put the 2 slashes, becomes a comment. Okay? So comments are very important. We're going to start using them every single time that we write code in the next videos. So let's get the habit of writing this. You should get the habit of writing them. It is very important. And of course, in the future, as we progress more into this video series, we'll talk more about documentation, which is, you know, what are the proper ways for us to do this? What are the proper ways for us to do these kinds of things? When should we do them? When, you know, maybe it's too overkill to do them, and so on. I don't know why Visual Studio is showing this as red. There's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes it just kind of bugs out. All right. So if you found this video useful and you don't mind, leave a like. If you're new to this channel, check out the video series, check out the channel. And if you like what you see, subscribe, be safe, and peace out.